Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte, and we are taking a look today at the Philadelphia Flyers. This is our first video. Now that I'm back from my little trip away, and man, the Flyers were actually a part of that little road trip. So we're going to talk about the Flyers today. It's been a really rough stretch for the Philadelphia Flyers. They broke a franchise record in the most terrible way you could. A 13-game losing streak. That is the longest in franchise history. The Philadelphia Flyers are down, and they are down bad this season. But if there's any way to rationalize this and make it somewhat less terrible than it is, I'll give you those reasons. So the first thing has been the Flyers, in terms of their COVID situation, have been absolutely obliterated. The Flyers have been probably hit, other than the Islanders, probably the hardest in terms of games lost without your players. So a lot of games have been canceled, but unfortunately for the Flyers, a lot of their games have not been postponed, and they are without their top-end players. So you're looking at some of their key injuries they have right now. Looking up front at the forward group, Sean Couturier, who is their first-line center, Joel Farabee, who is a top-six winger, and Kevin Hayes, who, again, a first- or second-line center or wing. So those are three guys in your top six just gone. And that's where the Flyers are kind of hurting right now. But it's even worse, on the back end. They have two defensemen that are top four defensemen out of your lineup in Ryan Ellis, who is a top pairing defenseman, and Sam Morin, who is a second or third pairing defenseman. So those are two top six defensemen, starting defensemen on your lineup out. That is a huge hole to fill. Those are five guys that are not just guys on the team, but important players on the team. So that means a couple of guys have to get called up. A couple of young forwards are coming into the fold from the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. You have Morgan Frost, a former first-round pick. Jerry Mayhew, who has looked pretty good and actually got his first NHL goal the other night. And then Max Willman. So those are a couple of guys from the Lehigh Valley Phantoms coming up. And to be honest, they've actually played fairly well, at least in last night's game. But let's be honest, those are not Couturier, Farabee, and Hayes. Those are three critical guys they lost. And the problem is, you start to see guys like JVR, who are probably more fitted on the second, third line, moving further up in the lineup, getting more power play time than they would if those guys were healthy. So it's not to blame just the young guys. This is more of a top-end scoring issue as well. And you're not seeing enough scoring from the guys that are there. Scott Lawton, Travis Konechny. I mean, Claude Giroux has been great. He scored 2 goals against Buffalo on Saturday. But again, it's the same issues. And then you look at some of the young defensemen that are coming up. Nick Seeler, Jackson Cates is another young forward that they were hoping to see more from this season. Former first-round pick. Hasn't really panned out the way the Flyers had hoped he would, as well as Cam York, who was a 2019 first-round pick and has been incredible this year, actually. He's been very good for the Flyers. But again, he's playing on the top pair. That's expecting a lot from a young defenseman in his first NHL season. Now, this is where we get to the season for the Flyers. And you could see where the injuries start to take over. So in the first 20 games, they weren't anything great. They were 8-4, nothing really that impressive. They then proceed to go on a 4-game losing streak, and that's where things kind of started to tail off. They then went and won 5 of their next 6 games after that 4-game losing streak. And how did they follow up that 5 of 6 game win streak sort of thing? A 12-game losing streak, and that's where they are right now. So after winning 5 of 6 in December, things have completely fallen off for the Philadelphia Flyers, and they have yet to win yet in the year of 2022. That's how bad things have been for the Flyers. Now, there is some optimism at the end of January or in mid-February going into March. They have an 8-game homestand, which is going to be critical for the Flyers. And it depends on who is on the roster at that point as well. They just had 3 games in a span of 2 weeks against the Islanders. They lost all 3 of those games. They only managed to scramble 1 point. And now the Islanders, who were 6 points behind them at the beginning of that stretch, are now ahead of them in the standings. Not to mention, they also, I think, have 8 games in hand on the Philadelphia Flyers, which means the Flyers are now dead last in the Metropolitan Division. So that leads us to the next conversation, and that is the captain, Claude Giroux. Now, Giroux has had a very good season for the Flyers. He has, in 39 games this season, 33 points. So it's not like he's been bad in any sense. He's been very good. Probably, you could argue, the most valuable player for the Flyers this season. Yet, here they are on a 13-game losing streak. And you start to wonder, he has a pending, his contract is ending this season. He's 34 years old. Is there a way that Claude Giroux moves out of Philadelphia? And we do have some insider information on that. And this is from Pierre LeBrun. The Flyers have not talked to teams about Giroux or talked to him about the trade deadline yet. Claude Giroux has not gone to them about the deadline. He hasn't even gone to his agent. Why? There are 9 weeks until the deadline. Take a deep breath. And then this is a follow-up to that. So this is from NHL Rumors Daily. The Avalanche have been in contact with the Flyers about Claude Giroux. So it sounds like there was a link there between the Claude Giroux and the Colorado Avalanche, which was interesting. Now to follow that up, this is from Elliot Friedman. Another pending UFA defender to watch is Philadelphia Flyers defenseman Rasmus Ristolainen. There was a time where he was headed in the direction of the player testing the market. We will see if that changes. And I think Chuck Fletcher and the Flyers do like Rasmus Ristolainen. The question is, what's the price tag going to be? If the Flyers can move out some cap space, maybe they do decide to bring back Rasmus Ristolainen, because defensemen are becoming more and more of a important thing to have in your roster. And from what we're hearing from Chuck Fletcher over this, really since this morning and yesterday, his plan is to keep this a very short retool. So if you want to do that, maybe getting rid of Rasmus Ristolainen doesn't necessarily help in that regard, right? And then we also got some news on the goalie front, and this is also from Elliot Friedman. If Philadelphia had been willing to take a late round pick for Martin Jones, it's possible he would have already been an Edmonton Oiler, but the Flyers wanted something better and felt the market will strengthen as we get closer to the deadline. So that's going to be interesting, another storyline to look at, and the Flyers have a decent amount of pending unrestricted free agents. Obviously the big ones being Martin Jones in between the pipes, Rasmus Ristolainen on the back end, and their captain, Claude Giroux, up front. But there are a couple of other guys that they could get some little draft picks here and there for, maybe some prospects in terms of a bigger deal if they wanted to add. And that was also from Mark Spector. This is the Oilers Insider. The Oilers have taken a look at Flyers goaltender Martin Jones as a trade option. So now we've heard from multiple reports that there is definitely interest from the Oilers side of things and Ken Holland on the Martin Jones front. Now, this is from Pierre LeBrun, and this is breaking here on the Philadelphia Flyers situation with Claude Giroux going into the deadline. So this is Giroux's agent, Pat Brisson, a very big agent in the NHL world. To me, via text message, this is what Pat Brisson said. Claude and I will be spending time together within the next few weeks, exploring his best options while having discussions with Chuck, which is Chuck Fletcher, the GM of the Flyers. With a full no move, Giroux can choose to stay put. All options will be looked at, obviously. And this is a follow-up from Frank Saravelli, and this was a comment from Chuck Fletcher himself. And this is in quote, "It will be Claude's decision as to whether Claude Giroux is moved at the deadline. As far as the deadline itself," this is in quote again, "we're looking to aggressively retool here. Everything is on the table." So I find that interesting, but I'd love to know how far to the extent. What are we looking at this year for the Flyers? Now, obviously, we could look a long-term future and how that affects the deadline. There's rumors they may look at a JVR buyout this summer. I think that's definitely on the table, especially how he's played this year. Would they trade Sean Couturier? That doesn't really make a ton of sense, right? Do you trade Ristolainen and some of the rentals at the deadline? Like, to what extent are they looking to do things? Are they going to trade Carter Hart? I think that's a little bit of a stretch, too. I think there are some untouchables for the Flyers I think Chuck Fletcher's just going to look at the market to see what he could get for who. And I think he'll kind of evaluate things from there. And this is from Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick. So Comcast Spectacor chairman and CEO Dave Scott says he doesn't see the Flyers as a 3, 4, 5-year rebuild. Again, continuing what Chuck Fletcher said on a short-term, aggressive, hard retool. Big difference there. This is from Jeff Merrick. Dave Scott says the Flyers not looking at a 3 to 4 or 5-year rebuild, believes they can right the ship sooner, adds that things like front office, coaching staff decisions, all on the table. And this is from Elliot Friedman on the situation with Giroux. Giroux is going to meet with his agent Brisson during All-Star Weekend, and we will see where it goes from there. And this is, again, from Chuck Fletcher. He says, bluntly, we need more top-end talent. Again, that's pretty obvious with how the injury front has looked for the Flyers. And this is a follow-up from Merrick. And as the Flyers are looking to aggressively retool. And that's been the sentiment here for the Philadelphia Flyers. And when I went to the game Monday night against the Dallas Stars. And you could sense the frustration from Flyers fans and the players alike. You could just tell on the bench. They had some energy. Mike Yeo said that in his post-game press conference. He was asked about from reporters, what do you think of the Flyers right now? Do they not have enough energy or motivation? And Mike Yeo was very quick to correct him and saying, listen, this is not an energy or motivation driven issue. It is just not getting the execution. And unfortunately, that is coming from their bottom lines where they're not getting that depth scoring. Giroux is scoring goals. But they need more from guys like Konechny, JVR. They need more from those guys, Scott Lawton, right? They need more scoring from those guys because they don't have the depth scoring right now. And that's really where things kind of take off from there because, unfortunately, like that game Monday, Carter Hart played great in that game, yet the Flyers couldn't really garner up any real traction in terms of scoring goals. They scored a fluky goal. The Islander game, they had the game handed to them. They were up 2-0 in the first period. Sorokin didn't look great. And next thing you know, the Islanders are up 3-2. They win the game 4-3. And, the biggest thing I want to talk about, after that game Monday, right? Claude Giroux is sitting on the bench. I don't know if they showed this on TV. He was mad. And I've been making rumors about him getting traded here or signing there the last couple of weeks. You could tell he is at his wits' end with the Flyers. And to be honest, in his 15 seasons now with the Flyers, 8 as the captain, I don't think he's ever seen things get this bad as a member of the Philadelphia Flyers. And it's a shame. This is one of those things that, unfortunately, after the success the Flyers have had for a while, it sounds like they're starting to pay the price. With bad development of some players, with bad drafting, the Flyers are where they're at today. And it makes you wonder, what are they going to do? Are they going to bring in a new head coach, new management? What is the theme here? Now, I remember before Chuck Fletcher was let go from Minnesota, he made some very interesting moves. That was when he traded for Martin Hansel from the Arizona Coyotes. I think they traded 2 firsts, a second, and a third, or something like that. They gave up an awful lot for a rental in Martin Hansel, who at the time was in his mid-30s. And that was one of the trades that ultimately led to the end of Chuck Fletcher in Minnesota. So you just hope he doesn't make any of those bad trades at the deadline for the Flyers this year and going into the summer. And he's already made a couple of interesting moves, but things I don't think are over yet in Philly. And in terms of their season, I think their season is done. I think the Flyers are going to have to retool. I think it's quite clear from what we've heard from the coaching staff. Unfortunately, Mike Yeo he doesn't have much to work with. And that, I hope, doesn't lead to him not staying long-term in Philly, because I don't think he's the problem necessarily. I just don't think he's going to get that opportunity next season with the way the Flyers fan base is, how passionate they are. I just think the Flyers need a reset. Unfortunately, it may mean losing their captain, Claude Giroux. So, guys, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.